Something unsettling is happening in Senegal, something no one expected. A political partnership once seen as unbreakable is suddenly showing dangerous cracks. For months, the world believed President Diomaye Faye and Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko were locked together in a historic alliance, the kind that could reshape Senegal's future. But now, the foundation of that partnership is shaking. It began on Tuesday, November 11th. President Diomaye Faye announced the removal of Aïssatou Mbadji, the powerful figure who led the Diomaye President coalition, the same coalition that carried him to victory in 2024. She wasn't just a political operative, she was one of Sonko's closest allies. And here's where the story twists. Just 24 hours before Faye's announcement, Prime Minister Sonko had publicly declared there would be no change at the head of the coalition. Two leaders, two opposing decisions, one explosive message. A power struggle is emerging at the very top of Senegal's new government. And this isn't the first time tension has surfaced between them, so the question now is simple and frightening. Are we witnessing the beginning of a political breakup? And if this alliance collapses, what does that mean for Senegal? Let's dive in. On Tuesday, Senegal was shaken by a sudden and very public clash at the highest level of government. Two leaders, President Faye and Prime Minister Sonko, released opposing statements about who should control the ruling coalition. It wasn't just a disagreement, it was a signal, a sign that the unity once celebrated at the top is now cracking open, and the timing couldn't be worse. Behind the scenes, Senegal is locked in tense, drawn-out negotiations with the International Monetary Fund. The country is desperately trying to secure a new lending program after the IMF froze a $1.8 billion support package last year. Why did the IMF pull out? Because the government revealed something devastating. Hidden debts, massive ones. Debts now estimated at over $11 billion, a financial time bomb blamed on the previous administration. This power struggle is not happening in a vacuum. It's unfolding in the middle of an economic crisis. And the world is watching to see who will hold the wheel as Senegal tries to pull itself back from the edge. Over the weekend, Sonko said that IMF officials were pushing for a restructuring of Senegal's debt, a move he said the government would not accept. The first sign of discord between the president and prime minister was the fact that President Faye did not make any comment regarding Sonko's statements. Ordinarily, it was expected that Faye would back Sonko's statements about Senegal not accepting the IMF's move to restructure its debt. The fact that he did not mean that he might be considering accepting the IMF's suggestion. Then came Tuesday, November 11th, when it became really obvious that Senegal's president and prime minister were in a row. The president made a sudden announcement removing Aïssatou Mbadji, a close ally of Sonko, from her position as head of the Diomaye President coalition, the same alliance that brought Faye to power in 2024. Faye replaced her with his former campaign coordinator, Aminata Touré, in a move widely seen as a direct challenge to Sonko's authority. Faye's move decision came just days after Sonko publicly declared that there would be no change at the head of the coalition, making Faye's action a deliberate political statement. But it didn't end here. In quick and firm response, Sonko's PASTEF party, the same party that President Faye is a part of, declared the president's decision illegal, insisting that Faye has no authority to dismiss Mbadji. The party also said it shares neither the same values nor the same principles, with Touré signaling a deepening political and ideological divide within the government. The fact that the president's party, PASTEF, is publicly speaking against the president's decision is proof that there is a clash between both the president and the prime minister. So this is no longer a matter of whether there is a clash between both leaders. Rather, it's now a matter of whether the coalition formed between the two is about to collapse. As we mentioned at the beginning of this video, this is not the first time that both leaders have publicly clashed, although at the time they both denied it, perhaps to show the public a unified front. Back in July, PASTEF organized a party to celebrate its 11th anniversary in Dakar. At the time, President Faye was not present at the celebrations because he had traveled to the US to meet with President Trump. The anniversary was supposed to be a time to reflect on the party's progress and how far it had come. Interestingly, however, it turned into a public confrontation when Prime Minister Sonko took to the stage. The fiery populist politician, who has always been known for his strong words, delivered a speech that left party members stunned. Rather than celebrating the anniversary of the party, Sonko used that occasion to call out the president. He specifically said that the one problem Senegal had was a lack of authority. He went on to accuse President Faye of failing to lead with authority, which has left him open to attacks from the opposition party. In his own words, "We will see if things happen like this. I call on Bassirou Faye. He just has to take responsibility. Otherwise, he will let me govern. He will let me govern. I'm very clear." These are very strong words from the Prime Minister. I mean, for a Prime Minister to say that the president should let him govern says a whole lot. And the fact that he came out publicly to say such words clearly showed that there was trouble between the two leaders. According to Sonko, something is deeply wrong at the top of Senegal's new government. He believes President Bassirou Diomaye Faye's quiet, passive style isn't just a personality difference. It's slowing down the revolution they promised the people. And when you look closely, the contrast between the two men is impossible to ignore. Sonko is fire, a man of loud conviction, sharp words, and unshakable nationalism. He speaks openly about sovereignty, independence, and breaking away from foreign control. Faye is water, calm, measured, careful, a leader who would rather whisper than shout. This difference became obvious with the IMF's proposal to restructure Senegal's debt. Sonko rejected it immediately and publicly. He called it dangerous. He called it a trap. But Faye? Silence. No clear support. No clear opposition. Just quiet. We see the same divide in how the president handles relations with the West, especially France. While Sonko pushes for distance and autonomy, President Faye seems far more willing to maintain diplomatic calm. To many Senegalese watching from the outside, it looks like two men sharing power, but walking in different directions. Sonko has never hidden how he feels about France. Not once, not ever. His criticism has been so sharp, so persistent, that after the election, French intelligence reportedly placed him on a watch list. That's how seriously they take his words. Remember, the Faye-Sonko coalition won power on a revolutionary promise: reclaim Senegal's authority and end France's grip on the country. And for a moment, it looked like that promise was becoming real. French troops packed their bags and left Senegal. A historic moment. But everyone knew who pushed that decision the hardest. It wasn't Faye. It was Ousmane Sonko, the man who had been calling for the end of French influence long before the coalition even existed. But then the story took a strange turn. Instead of pulling Senegal further away from Paris, President Faye began moving. Last year, he made his first official visit to France. He said it was to redefine the relationship, a word many supporters did not expect to hear so soon. And this year, during the International Conference on Financing for Development, he met the French president again, another warm handshake, another public signal that Senegal was open to cooperation. For a man elected on a promise of sovereignty, Faye's actions are starting to look very different from Sonko's vision. During that meeting, something became unmistakably clear. Reports later revealed that President Faye and Emmanuel Macron spoke not as distant partners, but as leaders ready to deepen cooperation. Their conversation wasn't tense. It wasn't confrontational. It was warm, almost aligned. The two presidents discussed a stronger partnership between Senegal and France, not less influence, not cautious distance, but more cooperation, especially in economics, security, culture, and even historical remembrance. President Faye himself confirmed it. Our discussions focused on cooperation between Senegal and France, as well as regional and international issues of common interest, he said afterward. To many Senegalese who voted for change, those words felt unexpected, even unsettling. The man who was supposed to help end France's dominance was now publicly embracing a broader partnership, and this only deepened the growing contrast between Faye's diplomacy and Sonko's resistance. On the French side, President Emmanuel Macron made his position crystal clear. He publicly stated that the Franco-Senegalese partnership wasn't fading. It was being rebuilt, a significant overhaul, he called it. It must allow us to move forward together in the service of the interests of our peoples and our sovereignty, Macron wrote on social media. A message meant to reassure both nations that France wasn't stepping back, only reshaping its role. He went even further. Economic, security and defense, cultural and memorial partnerships. These are all projects that we are closely monitoring with President Faye, Macron added. He then praised Senegal for its contribution to regional stability and its willingness to confront global challenges. For many observers, the message was undeniable. Faye was never planning a divorce from France. No breakaway, no abrupt separation. Instead, he was pursuing something far more calculated, a reset, a new version of the Franco-Senegal relationship that looked modern, balanced, and politically digestible. One built on the language of win-win partnership, but still rooted in cooperation, not distance. Faye didn't promise to cut ties. He promised to redefine them. And now, that redefinition is unfolding in real time, to the growing frustration of those who expected a clean, revolutionary break. And when you step back and look at the bigger picture, none of this should be surprising. From the very moment he took office, President Faye kept repeating the same line: "I will always be available to work with our European partners toward a win-win partnership, mutually beneficial to our respective peoples." He didn't hide it. He didn't disguise it. He said it openly. So in reality, Faye is not changing course. He is following the path he laid out from day one. But Sonko? Sonko has always been on the opposite side of that road. He has rejected cooperation with Europe, especially France, at every opportunity. His politics are loud, uncompromising, and deeply rooted in sovereignty. To him, partnership with Europe isn't win-win. It's another door for foreign influence. And now, that difference in philosophy is no longer theoretical. It's exploding into real political tension. Because let's be honest, this is not the direction Sonko wanted Senegal to go, not even close. And that tension is rooted in one simple truth. Ousmane Sonko was supposed to be the president. For those who may have forgotten, he was the people's choice, the face of the movement, the voice that electrified the nation. His arrest may have changed the ballot, but it didn't erase the memory of who the streets truly rallied behind. So to understand this clash at the top of Senegal's government, we have to go back to the moment where everything shifted. To understand today's political storm, you have to rewind the story to 2014, the year Ousmane Sonko made a bold move. He created a brand new political party, PASTEF, the Patriots of Senegal. At first, Bassirou Diomaye Faye was just a guest in the room, quiet, observing, unknown. But that didn't last long. Very quickly, Faye rose through the ranks. He became more than just a supporter. He became one of the thinkers, the strategists, one of the architects behind Sonko's 2019 presidential program. Sonko ran, he fought hard, and yet he finished third. But the movement didn't die, it evolved. Then came 2021, the moment everything changed. Sonko was arrested for allegedly raping a minor, a charge that split the nation and threw the opposition into chaos. With their leader behind bars, someone had to step up. That someone was Bassirou Diomaye Faye. As the new General Secretary of PASTEF, Faye had a mission, and he delivered. Under the Liberate the People Alliance, Faye helped secure 56 seats in the 2022 legislative elections, a major political victory that shocked the establishment. It was in these moments during Sonko's absence that Faye transformed from a quiet ideologue into a national force. As Sonko fought his way through one courtroom after another, cases he insisted were politically engineered to block his path to the 2024 presidency, something else was happening behind the scenes. Bassirou Diomaye Faye was arrested too. In April 2023, Faye was thrown into prison on charges of spreading false news, insulting a magistrate, and defaming a constituted body after comments he posted on social media. For months, he sat in a cell, silent and forgotten by the political elite. And then everything changed. Ousmane Sonko himself was detained and barred from running in the presidential election due to a defamation conviction. It was a political earthquake, the biggest threat yet to the movement they had built. By that time, the Supreme Court had already delivered another heavy blow. PASTEF was dissolved. In July 2023, the party they founded, the party that had shaken Senegal's political landscape, was officially disbanded. But instead of breaking the movement, the repression only hardened it. Inside the disbanded PASTEF, anger turned into strategy. Members, including Faye, became convinced that the arrests, the charges, the banning of the party were all part of a coordinated plan to clear the field and silence their strongest rivals. So they made a bold decision. If Sonko was barred, if the party was erased, if the system wanted to exclude them, then someone else had to step forward, and that someone was Faye. In the end, only one opposition candidate survived the political purge, Bassirou Diomaye Faye. Even from prison, his candidacy was approved while others were pushed out. Almost instantly, more than 100 political parties, including major figures like former Prime Minister Aminata Touré, united behind him under a single slogan, Diomaye is Sonko. Then came the turning point. A general amnesty was passed to calm rising tensions, and after 11 months in jail, Faye walked free. Sonko was released too. Within hours, both men hit the campaign trail, traveling across Senegal and pulling massive crowds despite the short campaign window. The people responded. About 7 million Senegalese turned out to vote, and to prove his integrity, Faye published his assets: a modest home, small plots of land, and bank accounts totaling roughly $6,600. It was a simple declaration with a powerful message. He wasn't running for wealth, he was running for change. On March 26, 2024, Bassirou Diomaye Faye was officially declared the new president of Senegal. In his first public address, he stood before the nation and said, "In electing me, the Senegalese people have decided on a break with the past. I promise to govern with humility and transparency." It sounded like the beginning of a united revolution. But beneath the celebration, one truth was impossible to ignore. Faye won because of Sonko. He won through Sonko's party. He won through Sonko's base. And in many ways, he won through Sonko's popularity. Without that engine behind him, analysts believe Faye could struggle, because Sonko still commands a massive political following and unmatched public loyalty, and that's what makes the current tension so shocking. Everyone believed the two men were bound by shared values: work, ethics, fraternity. Their partnership looked unbreakable. When Faye was arrested in 2023 for defending Sonko, Sonko stood with him. And when Sonko was pushed out of the 2024 race, Faye defended him too, and eventually inherited his support. Their alliance was once a symbol of trust. Now, it's at the center of Senegal's biggest political crisis. But with everything happening now, it's clear their partnership is breaking apart. So the question is inevitable. What happens if President Diomaye Faye finally dismisses Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko? Even if Faye fires him, Sonko does not lose his power, not even close. First, Sonko is still a member of parliament. Becoming prime minister did not erase his seat, it only suspended his duties. So the moment he leaves the prime minister's office, he walks straight back into parliament second. Pastef controls the majority in the National Assembly. Most MPs owe their political rise to Sonko's movement. With one signal, he could rally them and be elected president of the National Assembly, the second most powerful position in Senegal. And here's where it gets even more dramatic. The president of the National Assembly is constitutionally next in line. If anything happens to the president, that person becomes acting president. So in simple terms, even if Sonko is removed from the cabinet, he could return as the number 2 in the entire country and potentially the next in line for the presidency itself. If Faye and Sonko part ways, the battle won't end. It will simply shift from the State House to the parliament. Two centers of power. Two competing visions, one political system caught in the middle, and at that point, the question will not be who is president, it will be who truly controls the system, and many believe the answer would still be Ousmane Sonko. For Senegal's sake, the hope is that both men find a way to heal this divide before the political storm becomes impossible to contain.